Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week we wrap up, and I'm sad to say it, we wrap up our retrospective in honor of the late, great Sir Christopher Lee with a look at Lee's favorite of his Hammer films, The Devil Rides Out, based on a book by a writer that Christopher Lee lobbied to have Hammer adapt, Dennis Wheatley. This movie was intended to launch a new series. Drew, who brought us this film, is going to explain a little bit about what might have happened to that. And it does play that way. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Howdy.
Howdy. And also in Austin, special guest Jamie Barr, musician, pinup model, educator, lead vocalist, and upright bassist for Austin's premier all-female rock and roll band, Danger Cakes. You can find out about their latest shows, their album Quarter Life Crisis. She's going to tell us a little bit about the wonderful summer camp the rock camp she's been working at this summer, including today. You can reach them at dangercakes.net. Say hello, Jamie.
Hello, Jamie.
Hello. And I'm so glad there's someone here to do that. That's why. And you played the flute last time. That was
I
so
did.
awesome.
There will not be any flute for this. But
yeah, if only there were an appropriate.
Yeah, it wasn't an appropriate amount. I don't know if there was.
What if Makata commands flouting?
I mean, I wish I had like an orchestra that I could just summon. That'd be great.
Right.
If we were at rock camp, if we were at girls' rock camp, I could have my children go forth and rock, like students.
Oh,
but
gosh.
yeah,
I would love to hear the children go forth and rock. That would be awesome. All right, and from way over in Los Angeles tonight, Adam Foshko, writer and creative consultant for Activision's Call of Duty Exo Zombies, the explosive new episodic zombie fest, starring John Malkovich, Bill Paxton, John Bernthal, Rose McGowan, and Bruce Campbell, as well as he is also screenwriter for the upcoming Skylanders Superchargers, due out later this year. Say hello, Adam.
Hello from LA.
Hello.
I have to point out, I noticed actually that a guy working on the Skyland, one of my Halloween Man art graduates, has gone on to work on the Skylanders comic book, and that made me think of Adam today. Yes.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
There are Skylanders comic books? I didn't even know.
Yeah, there is. Actually, there's a bunch of them.
You should see if you can get that gig. I shouldn't even say that out loud. But, okay, according to Wikipedia, The Devil Rides Out, also known, interestingly enough, as The Devil's Bride in the United States, is a 1968 British, as Drew would say, very, very, very British, based on the horror film based on the 1934 novel of the same name by Dennis Wheatley. It was written by Richard Matheson, who you'll recognize from Last Man on Earth and a lot of really great episodes of The Twilight Zone, and we did his film Legend of Hell House. So Richard Matheson, and directed by Terence Fisher, who directed Horror of Dracula and Brides of Dracula, which I think was the finest Hammer film. The film stars Christopher Lee, Charles Gray, who you'll know like as Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever, and then some people I don't know.
Or the narrator from the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, that's right. He's
true,
the guy with the fucking neck. Right.
I think that's actually more likely what fans of this show would probably know him from.
It's possible. Charles Gray, so fantastic.
And Legacy, maybe.
He also was Bassanio in the BBC Merchant of Venice, for what it's worth. Okay, Nike, I just remember that because I watched that in college instead of reading the play. I'm sad to confess. Nike Argy, Leon Green, and Patrick Moore. Those are three performers I do not know, so we'll find out more about them. All right, so I've jabbered on enough. Let's get our opening thoughts. Let's go, Drew, Jamie, Adam, and Jason. Drew, what have you brought us to, sir?
This is a Hammer film I came upon later in life. It's a movie I always heard a lot about, but I only managed to actually see it a few years ago, and it quickly has become one of my favorite Hammer movies. I know it's a kind of a flawed movie in some respects. Like, the ending of the movie doesn't quite work as well as I think I would like it to, but I don't care, because even with that, it's never dull. It's this incredibly weird. This movie's filled with lots of weird, sometimes dated but weird imagery. It's got lots of Christopher Lee being awesome as a hero for a change, and I just love Christopher Lee in this role. I would have loved to have seen him play this character more. And just the crazy occult world. I love the bad guy. I love Mr. Mikado. I love Charles Gray. He's so genteel and so British and so polite, yet he's the leader of a massive satanic cult, and that's amazing to me. I adore this movie. Out of all the movies that we had lined up to do this retrospective, all of them, I enjoy to varying degrees. And, The Wicker Man, perhaps a better movie than this, but this was the movie that I was really looking forward to talking about, because I just love this movie.
That's outstanding. Outstanding. Okay, Jamie, what were your opening thoughts on this?
Well, there are parts of this movie I didn't feel really made a lot of sense, and some of it I was just like, what? And there were times where I asked a lot of questions, but I felt that I was glad that I had Mr. Drew Edwards to aid me in my watching of this, because some of it just did not seem to make sense to me. And I was totally unaware, spoiler alert, that they were having an orgy. Supposedly there was supposed to be an orgy scene in this movie, and I didn't even realize that was what was going on. And
there was an orgy? I missed the orgy as well.
See?
The part where they're all writhing on each other, that's like a PG-13 orgy.
It's not even PG-13. This movie's rated G. I didn't even understand. I was like, what are they doing? This was like more... I don't know. This was worse than like a 6th grade dance. We were just dancing,
and it was
was
liturgical dance. It was definitely an orgy, but that's all standards and practices would allow in England at the time.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty funny that the whole thing. I just thought that was hysterical.
Although if you turn the volume down, it's a really bitchin' heavy metal video.
But I said I'd probably give it another watch, but I don't know. Like this one, there was just so many times where I was just like, this is ridiculous, and and I know you like that. This is ridiculous, Drew, and we'll probably get on more of that.
The fact that this movie is ridiculous. It is a batshit crazy movie at times.
I don't know. I mean. Okay.
I wouldn't say it's that crazy, Drew. I don't know if it's that. I just said it doesn't make sense.
We've seen worse. We've seen crazier.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Before we start debating, I'm gonna let's take Jamie's review at her word that she regards it as crazy, batshit crazy. So
no,
right.
That was Drew's words. That is not mine.
Her word was ridiculous.
I said ridiculous.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, Adam, what are your thoughts? Devil Rides Out.
I got to tell you, this is, in the vernacular that I use, whether it's a picture or a movie or a film, this is a movie through and through. I think mostly because I feel like this is the version of Christopher Lee, which is sort of the occult action playset version of Christopher Lee. And he is played wall to wall. And just watching him, always whipping out another plan, always being in command, always, jumping into a car and riding off somewhere, always, pulling some occult trinket out of his pocket or summoning this or that, to combat evil. Or in this case, Charles Gray, who's sort of playing an Aleister Crowley sort of character. This just really made me smile in a lot of ways. There are a lot of things, as I think we all agree, that didn't make a lot of sense. A few plot devices that weren't fully formed or that got used, maybe more than they should have, or twice even, and the liturgical dance orgy scene. But you know what? As strange as it was at times, it's a gleeful movie. And this may be really, for some reason, I may just be emotionalism sort of creeping into it, but this may be one of my, at least for right now, sort of favorite glimpses of the Christopher Lee that could have been. And it just really made me smile. It was a giddy movie. And I think it was great. I'd never seen it because, quite honestly, if I'd seen the title somewhere, I wouldn't have been able to place that because it makes no sense whatsoever. I would be like, oh, is this some sort of strange Western occult thing that's sort of being slammed together? The devil rides out, or is it a strange spaghetti Western that I missed out on back in the day? No, this is really a Christopher Lee movie, and you'd never know. So I, for one, was surprised by it, and I'm totally delighted.
That's
despite
fantastic.
Its flaws.
I kind of wonder. I kind of wonder if. Thank you. If maybe the title, because we've seen movies sometimes sung honestly by something as minuscule as a title that people can't figure out. You know, I think a lot of people didn't watch that Roger Moore action movie from the '80s because it was called Folks.
Folks.
Two lowercase
that was
s.
Yeah.
And people are like, people just look at the title and they go, I don't know what that is, and so they're.
This was actually called The Devil's Bride in America when it was initially released.
And just think how much better it would have been. I mean, The Devil Rides Out, also, I think, not quite the right title for this film. There's so many, you know, if they had called it something like I don't know, Devil Hunter or something like that, anything, you know, I think people might have given it a second look. If it had been clear that Christopher Lee was the star, that might have made a difference, you know, because if you look at the cover that this thing got, it has a big Baphomet on a horse, you know, with people running, and then you have Christopher Lee's name is in the background.
I think the Devil Rides Out actually, technically, you were referring to the Angel of Death, which does appear on a horse.
Yeah,
that's
kind of what I figured later.
I'm just saying that this could have been presented as something on the order of an adventure film. You know, because it really, although it has horror trappings, and this is my first impression, although it has horror trappings, this is essentially a late 1960s adventure movie that just happens to take place in 1929, and it's plotted like an adventure movie. It has a payoff more or less like an adventure movie. It just has magic, that's all. You know, and so if you could imagine, I love watching this because it's like a counterpoint to Van Helsing. You know, Van Helsing would never, ever use magic. This guy uses magic all the time. But you could imagine a team-up between this guy, you know, the Duc de Richelieu, and Van Helsing, and, you know, maybe somebody else, like Indiana Jones, who also occasionally trucks around with magic, you know, in his adventures. So that's a fanfic waiting to happen, by the way.
Sorry?
I was going to say, just to chime in here on your comparison to Harrison Ford, I should say Indiana Jones, but it does, I know this is a Christopher Lee retrospective, but can I just say, Drew and Adam, you two, the way you talk about Christopher Lee, there is some, old man bro love. I don't know what it is that I've never bared witness to before.
So
I feel like it's kind of like G-love, like grandpa love. Like bro love's not the correct word. It's like a hetero, I don't know, a hetero bro crush. Is that right? Hetero grandpa crush? Because he's that old. Well, now he's deceased, but just going to throw that out there.
Is it that surprising to assume
no, and that's the funny thing.
That a horror movie obsessed person might develop a bit of a admiration for none other than Tall, Dark, and Gruesome. I mean,
I think you know, we definitely have some level of sort of hero worship. You know, the same way some people are about LeBron. I think some of us are about
Christopher Lee. Yeah, I've noticed that. It's funny though. It's because he is definitely one that men very much cling to. And I've
well,
noticed
I
that.
wouldn't want, the thing is, I think men tend to love actors who, many times, are ones that you wish you could be. And in the case of Christopher Lee, this is a guy who has all the right tricks. I mean, he's born, he's well born, he's well educated, he's damn tall, he speaks all these languages, so it's no wonder Christopher Lee was incredibly arrogant.
well, and in fairness, here's the other thing too, and that is we're watching him in a movie, which for me was really unexpected, and a part that was really unexpected. We've seen Christopher Lee do a bunch of different things, and there's regular old Christopher Lee, if you can say that, and that's great. He's a known quantity, and you kind of go, okay, he's the Horror Express Christopher Lee, he's the Christopher Frankenstein Christopher Lee, he's the guy you expect. But I've never seen him do this before, and it was just, I think, so refreshing to see him in something completely different and a completely different character. And,
it was great to see Christopher Lee playing Vincent Price.
I don't think he's playing Vincent Price. I think he's playing
you
Peter
thought of
Cushing.
Peter Cushing. But the stash is so Vincent Price. Come on.
The facial hair is Vincent Price. But Vincent Price is even when Vincent Price was the good guy, he was always more camp than Christopher Lee is here.
I feel like Christopher Lee's like 10 seconds from slapping a dude and being like, "Get on with it, man!" He's just running the whole movie, running, driving fast.
He really is.
Go ahead.
I would like to backtrack though. You're talking about what precise genre this is. I call this kind of thing, and I call my own work this. I call this sort of thing weird adventure because it's somewhere in between horror, because there's that creepiness to it, and action adventure. And this is like an early example of it, because now, that sort of thing is blown up. We have stuff like Blade and Hellboy and
all the
Buffy.
mummy movies, which did well.
Yeah, all the mummy movies. But this Dennis Wheatley stuff, and I guess Solomon Kane would be another example of like the prototype for this stuff. But because there's parts of this movie that are legitimately unsettling in the fact that they're strange, but it's not. You never fear for the Duke. I mean, he's so super capable.
But there are moments where they actually execute suspense really well. I mean, it suffers from its budget. It suffers from the technology of the time. It suffers, compared to the effects they were trying to do. But there are actual moments of suspense that kind of play pretty well. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think one of the best moments of suspense is actually when Charles Gray goes to visit basically there's a Scooby gang in this movie, and one part of the Scooby gang is this rich married couple that own this big house. So Charles Gray goes there because the married couple is guarding two other members of the group. And
Christopher Lee's cousin.
He just stops and sits. Right, it's the cousin. Charles Gray stops and sits in the drawing room with the woman as she lies and tries to pretend that the two people that Gray is looking for isn't there, and they just and Gray starts to hypnotize her, and he's his own special effects. There's no special effects in this whole scene other than just zooming in on Charles Gray's rather remarkable steel blue eyes, and this is like the gayest show we've ever done.
I'm sorry. It really is. At least the gayest one I've ever been on. And that's all right. I don't mind. But it's just funny to hear you guys talking like this. His piercing steel gray eyes.
No, but that is an amazing scene, though. But I want to talk about
I love about that scene, too, though, is when she breaks out of it and she asks him to leave, he gets up and leaves because he's polite and British that way. I mean, he has the great line though, "I won't be back, but something will." I love the way he phrases that, and this is the total proper British gentlemanness of it. If you don't want me here, I won't be here.
I'll just send a giant spider.
Explain a little bit, Drew. You were talking beforehand, and I think this is a good topic. I do want to get back to talking about the Duke, but I want to explore this. You were saying one of the reasons why the movie maybe didn't do as well in the U.S. I said it was because the title doesn't work, and that's what Adam thought. The title turned him off from watching it. Sounds like a Western, but and it was called The Devil's Bride in the U.S. Not better. But you were saying, forget all that. That's not it. The problem with the movie is that it is like a way, way, way British movie, even more so than most British movies.
This movie is very, very much about this sort of romantic idea about the British, aristocracy, rich British people being very posh, and everybody has titles like Duke and Countess. And, they're driving around in these amazing cars and wearing these great costumes. And there's this sort of unspoken, I almost say like romanticism about being upper class in this. Because this movie, there are the most normal seeming guy is Rex. And he is still very, very posh.
Rex is an American, supposedly. Rex is for what it's worth, the character of Rex is intending to be a posh American, like Air Force pilot or something.
Yeah, but he doesn't
come across.
There's just this effete Britishness about this, and the way all the characters behave. That sort of, what we would call stiff upper lip Britishness. Yeah.
And there's no like wily Cockneys. There's no. Like in all those other Hammer films, there's usually like the laborers and the blue collar workers who make the funny lines and comment on what's going on. None of that here. In this case, our heroes are the aristocracy, and they're basically the only ones who inhabit.
Well, it's the aristocracy fighting the aristocracy too,
right?
Because even the villains are wealthy seeming people, and
yeah, for sure.
They're racially diverse, but they everybody looks like they're rich, and I kind of wonder if that underlining of classism did not, because there were nowadays we have Downton Abbey, we have all these other things, but like that sort of deal in that, but I kind of wonder for whatever reason that did not translate very well to American audiences. And, whereas the difference with your typical Hammer film, it took place in this sort of weird fantasy world, whereas this was just like rich British people in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And,
well,
I don't know.
Think of other films that star the very rich that have, of the United States. Generally, there's one or two characters of the middle class who give you sort of your anchor. So, like The Great Gatsby, your main character is not Gatsby, it's Nick, who is just a regular guy working as a stockbroker, who isn't, presumably Nick makes a fine living, but he's not Gatsby rich, and so you get a chance to sort of view that world from the outside. But you're right, this is written completely from the inside. Like, we're not going to stop and take the time to observe how wacky it is that these people lead such complete lives of leisure. I mean, the Duke essentially seems to just sit by the phone waiting for somebody to call him and bring him on another and to go on another adventure.
The very fact that he's devoted his life to studying the occult, as he says, that's not something that you can do if you have to have a regular job. I guess
you can't even be middle class. You'd have to be somebody with an income.
I just love that he just slips it in on the sly. By the way, he's like, I know I probably kept this quiet on the sly, but he just throws that in like, oh yes, I know you've known me your whole life, and you're my best friend, but there's something I've been keeping from you. I'm actually an expert.
Even that is so British, because being an expert on devil worship would be considered unseemly, and it wouldn't be something that you would talk about. And that's very, 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 cliche, stereotyped Britishness about that. Like, well, I have this really unseemly hobby, but I'm actually an expert on witchcraft and devil worship. And
the moment, I got to say that there's the moment when I realized that this really is intended, even if Matheson maybe isn't quite aware of it, or it is intended as a pilot, is because there are moments when you suddenly are aware, oh, this is the team that's always going to wind up facing the bad guys. With the Duke in the lead, and then Rex as there's this, the five-man band traditionally is the leader and the Lancer, who's always the opposite of the leader. So if the Duke is the way the Duke is, then Rex, being an American military man who always leads with his fists, is the the ultimate.
Right.
And then
it's sort of the Doc Savage.
Right, exactly. And then Simon is their young protege, and then you've got the married couple, the Eatons, who are there to kind of make commentary and give them all a home base. But
they got a room.
Yeah, right, exactly. And they can put them up. Oh, no problem. Like this happens all the time. This might be the first time they've ever had an adventure, or it could be the 9th time, but it's always going to be like this. And you really do sense that the next movie would happen and you'd meet exactly these same characters and they'd perform exactly the same functions. And that's the stuff that just makes me grin from ear to ear when I'm watching it, is like I'm going, oh my gosh, this is a pilot for something that never occurred.
That's right.
But it would have been awesome,
I feel like this is like the British Illuminati, like this whole, it's funny because I think about all these conspiracies now about celebrities and the Illuminati, and that's what this all reminded me of so much. Like, you could just totally,
absolutely.
like this would be a great movie for them to remake, honestly, like I think.
Well, Lee wanted them to remake up until the point where he was very elderly, because the Duke in the novel is actually an older man. And I actually think Sam Raimi could knock this out of the park if they did a new one. Like, especially thinking of like some of the visuals in this movie, they have this very sort of Evil Dead quality. Yeah. Although maybe I should say that those visuals have a Devil Rides Out kind of quality to them.
Who could play the Duke? Who would that be in a new film? I mean,
Sean Connery's retired, isn't he?
He is retired. Hugh Grant.
The guy that plays Bond now, what's his name?
Daniel Craig.
Craig.
Yeah, he'd be great.
I almost said Craig T. Nelson.
I gotta say,
he was playing Bond.
Now that Hugh Grant has reached the age where we're casting him in Leo G. Carroll parts, he could play this role.
Hugh Grant is too not quite manly
he's
enough.
Bumbling.
He's boy.
Yeah. He's bumbling. He is.
Daniel Craig.
I know.
Yeah. I guess that's a possibility.
This has to be someone.
Imagine.
Maybe Liam Neeson.
Oh, Liam Neeson actually would be really good.
Ooh, I hear the man crushes.
Yes. Put Liam Neeson in the same Van Dyke that he wore in Batman, and I think we're in business. I think that could.
Or he's kind of in The Haunting. Remember, isn't that The Haunting?
I haven't
seen
The Haunting.
I mean, hopefully he'd be better in this, but it's kind of. I don't know.
We're
going to a bad place now.
Okay, think about this. I just want to throw something out here. This movie, I was trying to figure out where the hell this movie fits into the Hammer, or whatever you want to call it, the Hammer calendar, right? So The Devil Rides Out came out in July of 1968. If you want to think in terms of the Dracula films, Dracula Prince of Darkness happened in 66. And then Dracula Has Risen from the Grave came out in November of 68. So half a year after Devil Rides Out. So Christopher Lee comes back to play Dracula in 66. He turns around and he makes The Devil Rides Out, and then he makes his third Dracula. And it's just interesting to think that if you were a moviegoer, then this is a guy that you would have just seen play Dracula just a short time ago, and then you'd see play Dracula again just a few months from now. It's odd, to realize how close.
That's how I saw this movie.
Yes, well, that's true. That's exactly right. That is exactly how we've seen it, mixed in with this other stuff. And in fact,
this is my first time seeing this movie, I have to say.
This
was the first for me. No, this was my first time. Yeah,
Oh,
actually,
wow.
I think every movie we've seen this month has been my first time seeing these movies.
Not Horror Hotel.
No, not Horror Hotel. I did see that.
Wow. Well, good. I'm glad you. I remember showing this movie to a bunch of people the first time, and all of them said, yeah, I can see how it was supposed to be a pilot. That was their only takeaway, was that they felt like it was setting up a lot.
I would have loved to have seen this character again. I there's so much shades of other things that I like in this character, and
let's describe him. Tell us about the Duke. Like, if you're saying, okay, here's my official handbook of the Marvel Universe, one sheet on the Duke de Richelieu. What is this character? I mean, what because we've been talking around him, but I haven't actually said, like, who is this guy? Go ahead.
He's an occult pulp hero. He's aristocratic, obviously, as we said. He's very authoritarian. He's definitely the boss, which is, you don't really see heroes like that very much anymore, where they're actually, like, you do this, you do this, you do this, and
right.
He's not like a jokey type hero like that we have now. You couldn't have Chris Pratt playing this character.
Yeah, he has no one-liners.
Yeah, no one-liners. He's completely stoic, which is kind of, I guess, the tie-in to Lee's villain characters. But the other thing that's really great about him is that he disappears for short periods in the movie because he has to go do research. and there's just something completely charming about that, because how often do you like, well, I'm in over my head, I got to go get the books. You don't actually, that doesn't actually happen too much. Usually, your hero is just able to, if they're this type of hero, which is an intellectual hero, they're usually able to just spout off the exposition that they need, because no one wants to stop the action. And he is the most interesting character in the movie, other than Mokata, that is. And so, like, when he is off screen, the movie does drag a bit more. But I don't know.
There's that whole scene, like we talked about with the Charles Gray thing, and upstairs, the people who were sleeping wake up and try to murder everybody else, and to some extent, Matheson gets the Duke off the screen in order to let the other characters have business, I think.
Well, it makes them vulnerable too. Like, there's a great scene where Simon tries to strangle himself with a crucifix. I mean, that's a great bit of horror right there. We haven't even really gone into the plot. I mean, the whole idea is, the Duke has this young friend that has fallen in with these devil worshippers. Him and his war buddy snatch him up and say, like, oh no, we're getting you out of here, so they won't have a Coven of 13 anymore. And the rest of the movie is kind of the devil worshippers trying to get this guy back.
That's right.
And the
Adam, I think you were going to say something.
Well, what's so interesting is that, even though he is an expert, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, Drew, he goes and he does research. So it's not like he's an expert, and he's entirely full of himself. And every time he leaves, terrible things happen. But what's so interesting is that even though he's authoritative and everything else, he's also, and he studies, he's obviously made a great study of black magic and whatever else. He's also quite observant and religious. And, he is, not a man above belief. He's like someone who actually admits even the fact that he's afraid, because he knows what's out there. And so what's so interesting is they actually tried to make him into, a complete character while still keeping him at the level where he was the most interesting person. He was the most active person on screen, but he had these moments where, he would, reveal something new about himself. And he wasn't just the one note that they kept sort of pressing over and over and over, because they really could have done that. And
go ahead. You mentioned him being fearful at times. That's something we never got out of the Cushing Van Helsing.
Right.
The Duke actually, even though he shares that sort of the thing that Jason calls manly Christianity, he has that same vein of that going through him. He is a little bit more vulnerable, which is funny because like Cushing actually normally does project a lot more warmth on screen than Christopher Lee ever does. But I think it's almost when someone who is like Christopher Lee says they're afraid, it somehow means a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I should point out that Van Helsing had the line, "Only God has no fear," but he just said it himself. We never actually ever saw Peter Cushing, go, hang tight. I'm feeling a little fearful right now. That just never. You're right. That never happened. But boy, there would be. It is interesting, Adam. You talked about the religiousness of this character. The Duke, by the way, physically, he is Christopher Lee. He's quite tall, however the hell tall Christopher Lee is. He's got gray hair, grayish, gray-brown hair. He's got a Van Dyke, which is to say a mustache with a goatee, looking slick. And, so he is completely the reverse of Peter Cushing. I'm trying to think what else distinguishes it. Well, just the use of all the magic. Like he can call up, like, Latin satanic phrases. He knows like the secret ways that the angel of death is going to behave, and he knows like when not to look and all that Indiana Jones stuff. So it is, maybe actually what would be good is not a movie series but just a television series. Might be great for this.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yes, to get to one more thing on this team that we were talking about. So I think the most charming moment in the whole thing, and the one that really gets a laugh just from its level of comfort, is the whole team. They create a protecting circle that they have to stay in to defend themselves against the forces of darkness that are surely going to come to this house that they're staying in. So they make a big circle, and then they all just kind of lay down in it just to kill time. and it's such a funny scene because now it's probably the only opportunity you'll ever have to see Christopher Lee kicking back, his fingers sort of laced together on his stomach with his head on a little pillow in the middle of a giant magic circle with these other people, whining and moaning about how they're going to have to stay there all night. It's great. This is like the moment when Matheson is suddenly like showing his kind of television sense of humor, and I really enjoyed seeing that.
I have to say, we didn't mention the little love interest there. The weird little, I don't know what the heck to call that. Like I think I've met you before, and then
yes,
you're possessed by the devil. I love you. Don't die.
Possessed women are.
You're gonna kill me in my sleep. I love you. That was this whole movie. It was just so funny.
No, you're totally right. So the character is called Tanith, which apparently is
her real
name.
No, it says it's her real name.
Oh no, for sure. Like, wait, no, that she was born with the.
She says it's her real name, but it's not her blood baptism name or whatever, your devil baptism.
That's right.
Name that they get to pick. But it sounds, apparently they think they're like, oh, that must be a devil's name, and then she's like, no, it's actually my real name. And
my
then,
parents were hippies.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, that's.
My
I just
parents
happened to fall into the occult. It was natural. I was a shoo-in.
But yeah, so she's the only member of the. She's not really part of the team. Everybody else in this movie, on the good guy side, knows one another, and into their midst has come this girl Nike, who. Well, she tangentially knows. I think she knows Rex from before, Rex the American, and so so that's how they decide they're going to rescue her, and then they decide they have to keep her and also their friend Aaron from being dragged back into this coven. If we were to lay out like the basic plot of the film, it's first. get their friend out of the coven. Then it's rescue the girl from the coven. And then it's now the coven is going to try to rescue them back. And then it's stop the final mass. That's it. There's like 4...
I thought this movie was a little creepy, like not in like the way it's supposed to be creepy, but more like until there was like the weird scene with the dragon that was in the floor or the goat head, whatever, the satanic little genie pops out. Like until that part where it was, they entered in like the mysticism and I just thought that, I was like, man, Christopher Lee and Rex, their characters are pretty rapey. Like, especially, like, Rex. Like, him, I was like, they pretty much just kidnapped them. It's like, yes, I mean, technically, until that point, like, at that point, there was no, like, there hadn't been the weird clothed dancing orgy, and at that point, there still hadn't been, I guess that was
really good point. No,
but I thought they were really creepy. I was like, man, because
you're
good
like, who
thing
are they?
this happened. Like, yeah, because we promised your dad. I have to tell you, if somebody was like, hey, Jamie, I promised your dad I'd make sure you were okay, and dragged me out of a club, I'd be a little like, oh God, help me.
I'm actually,
all right, maybe.
Oh, no, but you've raised a really good point. You're right. And more is not made of that, but it really could be, because we take it so for granted that they're doing the right thing. You're right. It'd be really great to have one of these characters go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, Tanith actually wants to be a Satanist, maybe.
Yeah, she does. She seems like the whole time she's just fine with it. Like, she knows exactly what she's doing. And this guy, whom he says, I've met you before, once before. And then suddenly, I love you. Like, this guy's a whack job. And he's just willing to listen to whatever Christopher Lee says. I mean, he's a great little henchman. He's a handsome one. He's just like, oh, I'll follow anything you tell me, Christopher Lee.
You ever get the impression this is what would have happened to Ferris Bueller had he grown up? That's, he would be ordering...
But I'm now picturing Matthew Broderick with that whole get-up.
I was thinking he would have been ordering henchmen around, and doing stuff like, we got to kidnap Sloane because I think she's under the wrong influences. Okay. And going and doing
Rooney!
Now I want to see a movie where Ferris Bueller takes on a devil cult.
Yeah.
See, all of these ideas are fan fiction just waiting to happen.
I love the, we keep making fun of the orgy scene. I kind of love it because I even love the dodgily made up, the goat of Mendez. And I love the fact that there's like the one guy that it's his job to sit there and swing the incense around. And I was like, man, that would have been like the lamest joke. Like, everybody else is getting the grind on each other.
Oh, that orgy, when the devil shows up.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
but it's
that's orgiastic, sure.
They're the most ineffectual. That orgy. They're the most ineffectual sort of minions in the world, because there's 100 of them. I don't know how many there are. These two guys show up with a car, and everyone just goes and they just start.
No, you're totally right. The scene makes no sense. If you stop and think about it, it makes no sense at all, because you do anticipate you're going to have a huge fight. And there's nothing. It really doesn't go that way at all.
Well, most of those Satanists are actually pretty old. In fairness, like they're not really up to fighting a car.
And rich.
God, thank God this orgy was closed.
They should have had like the Satanist. They should have like the Satanists go like, well, let's pay some poor people to fight Christopher Lee.
Yeah, well, it's a good point. Where are the minions? But you know what? I don't have a problem with it. I think Matheson is being efficient, and so this is just the way he's moving it along. I want to talk about.
I do love Makata and his purple graduation robe.
Oh, the groovy, yeah, man. The groovy robes are awesome. I also was unaccustomed to seeing Charles Gray quite this young. It was weird. I mean, young enough to have.
I thought so too.
Admittedly, he's got silver hair, but I mean, still, it's like way.
I think he's
way
always
younger
had silver hair.
Has anyone ever seen this man young?
Or his neck.
I mean, what's that movie with the Nazis and it's a murder mystery in Nazi Germany? Night of the Generals. No, but that's the year before.
Sure.
Yeah.
Was that Peter O'Toole in that?
Yes. Everybody who looked like they could be a Nazi was in that movie. Nobody watched
What are you trying to say about Charles Gray?
Well, the funny thing is, in The Legacy, he also plays a Nazi.
He did. He was good in The Legacy, too.
Yeah.
So, if you need somebody that looks like a pervert, a devil worshiper, or a Nazi, at one point in time, you hire Charles Gray.
And apparently a criminologist, because it all kind of works.
Well, you know,
they actually
jump
got
to the
Charles
left.
Gray to say, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. One thing that you must see, Charles Gray in The Merchant of Venice is hilarious because that was filmed for television, and so consequently everybody would be watching it in SD on small screens and yada yada. Nevertheless, he wears like a big brown curly wig, and I can't remember if he has a mustache as well, but he definitely has a big brown curly wig, so he looks like Mr. Cotter, essentially. It is it's the funniest thing.
Is he Shylock? Who is he?
No, he's Bassanio. He's the one who's in love with Portia.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're making this podcast way too highbrow. We need to go back to talking about The Devil Rides Out. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, I want to talk about the apparitions in The Devil Rides Out because there are, and this is one of the most memorable things. So the first one was there in the orgy, like you were talking about.
No, that's the second one. The first one is the as Jamie called them, the devil genie with the red eyes.
Good effect.
Oh, right.
Good effect.
That was.
I actually think that one's still kind of creepy. I don't mind saying that.
I agree with that. I agree.
It's creepy, but I thought it was also. I was like, of course he's black. Like, what was up with
that?
that?
There is an element of racism there. I think it's. I mean, I can't even talk my way around it. It's truly the fear of the other. The fact that he's black.
I kind of thought this was more like I know they're practicing black magic, but then with the chickens and the goat, and I was like, oh my God, these British people are doing voodoo.
Right.
So maybe that's why he's black. Maybe there's a real reason behind it.
The Duke throws out this thing about the black and the white chickens, are necessary. So I'm going to take it for granted that supposedly there was some non voodoo related, voodoo essentially. But who knows? I mean, this is really interesting. Apparently, Matheson had took all of the stuff that was in Wheatley's novel that had all this black magic stuff, all these different incantations and special tricks and just all the ingredients, and just stripped as much of it out as he could because he said that he found that it was reading too much I can't remember what word he used, but basically it was just bogging down in all these details, but some things are left, the chickens are discovered, and Christopher Lee says this line about something like, the black cock and the white hen or something, I don't know, but there was some significance to the color of the chickens, but
quiet.
Yeah, so there's that googly-eyed, because the genie's eyes were odd, one is pointing in the wrong direction.
Well, yeah, that's what's really creepy about it is he's got those really bizarre red contacts in, and and then there's the whole business don't look at the eyes, and you
can't not look at the eyes.
Yeah, because the moment somebody says that, you're going to start looking at them. And the guy playing the demon or whatever you want to call him, and he's not wearing any monster makeup. He's essentially just wearing what amounts to a red diaper, and he's just sitting there smiling. He's not even trying to be menacing per se, but there's just something about the fact that the guy looks so serene with these blood red eyes that makes it effective to me. You know, like I understand that the effects are dated. You know, and good Lord, you know, nowadays they would do some insane CGI creature, I'm sure, but
which would not necessarily be any improvement, honestly. You know, and that's I remember actually I did watch I said I didn't watch the remake of The Haunting, but now I remember I did because I remember there's you know, there's big CG effects, whereas before you just had the door, you know, and the pounding. But okay, so there's the genie. There's actually there's several that approach the magic circle. I don't think that's in the same scene. I can't remember. When they're in the magic circle, they're approached by alternately a big spider.
Yeah.
Which is an okay effect. That wasn't that interesting. But
that cracked me up.
But the little girl was a great image because they set up this thing where the daughter of the couple that owns the house, she comes out, like, for whatever reason that children come out in the middle of the night, you know, I need a drink of water, whatever, and they're very afraid for her because the giant spider apparition is behind it. But I think it's the Duke who realizes, look, this is an illusion, she's not really there. And he's quite cruel because they want to run and grab the little girl who's, like, starting to scream and all this.
I think it was it was the own dad, because I remember he was like, damn it, Martha. Like, he was just like, he was cruel, but at the same point, he was just like, it's not her. Like, how much have you been drinking today? Like, you know, she didn't know where her daughter was at night. Like, he's like, she's not here. She's at the friend's house, you know? Like, she had a slumber party.
Well, she's with the butler. She's with the butler.
She's running with scissors outside somewhere. You know?
No, you're totally right. And they end up dousing that one by, let's see,
holy water.
They throw the water at the girl? Is that what happened?
Yeah, they throw holy water at the girl.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And then I think my favorite apparition, setting aside the Angel of Death for a moment, my favorite apparition is the devil that shows up at the orgy.
The Ghost of Mendez.
What did you call him?
It's the Goat of Mendez.
The Goat of Mendez. Yes. Yeah. He has sort of a goat face, and you know, and a man's body. I mean, it is cool. It's a really, really weird looking creation, and it's neat. I was really, you know, I was impressed by that. And
I liked its little crip walk. Like, it had like a little jig.
Yes. Well, that's what's weird is all the Satanism in these things has a goofy sort of off-putting weirdness to it. You know, remember, and that was also the case with Rosemary's Baby, you know, where there was evil going on, and oftentimes it was so strange as to almost be funny, except for that they were very dangerous, and that's sort of the neat trick. And although some people say that the appearance of Rosemary's Baby is one of the reasons why this movie didn't do as well, because, you know, it's just taking us into a whole different era, you know, from this strange movie that takes place in 1929. So, the final apparition that we should talk about is the Angel of Death. Let me lay the cards on the table. I thought it was fine, but did the Angel of Death work for you guys? Not work for you? Some people don't really like it.
It works for me until they take the helmet off and it's like a hokey-looking plastic skull.
It works for me until the little flash, the instant replay thing. The rewind. Like, I was like, they could have just dealt. I would have been fine with a little less horsemen and just the one scene, you know. But to like stutter it like that, it was so hokey. Like, it made me laugh. I was like, ah!
Yeah, that part didn't
it's like
really
record
work.
scratch, if like, except horse, like, it's just awesome.
But you see that a lot in films. Like, I know in James Bond movies I've seen it. You know, in scenes where they're climbing and you have rocks pulling away, and sometimes, you know, the director will literally just run it back again so he can show the same rocks falling. Oh, because I don't know. I guess because he has to fill precious seconds and he can't figure out how else to do this. You know, I don't
Well, because he wanted more rocks, Jason.
Yeah. In this case, he only had the horse rearing up once, and he had to run it back again, which actually would have been fine if they had just put a cutaway in there. You know? I mean... Yeah,
exactly. If they just didn't put it back to back like that, like, rewind. You know, it just looked like that. And it was just... It struck me as funny. I thought it was downright comedic.
So in that scene, that is the circle scene, and it's actually Christopher Lee and the Eatons, because Rex, the American, and Tanith are like out in the barn during that whole period. It's sort of amazing because this gets us sort of towards the end, because Christopher Lee makes a spell. He says, I'm not going to do this until the very last minute, because spells in the world of this movie, in theory, have price. You know, and in this one, it's a big price. He gets rid of the Angel of Death, but the Angel of Death won't go away empty-handed. He's going to take somebody. And luckily, he takes the newest member of the crew, Tanith, who is out there with Rex. So Rex comes in, and the new girl, Tanith, is dead, which means that the Duke's spell sacrificed Tanith. You know, you kind of have to imagine that he is subtly able to go, also, preferably not one of my closest friends. And so Tanith gets it. And then very quickly, they go to
the butler comes down, and he's all beaten up, and they reveal that the devil cult has kidnapped the young girl.
Yes. So now that takes us straight to the climax, which is that they rush to the hideout of the devil cult, where they have the young girl who I got to admit, this is actually really scary, because, I mean, it looks scary. When Charles Gray is about to cut that girl's throat, it does look to me like he is about to cut that girl's throat. It's really,
I thought so too. I was like, oh, he's a little close.
Yeah, that is a worrisome scene, and you know, they bust in. I'm trying to see, my brain is hopping immediately to the very end of this fight. I'm trying to remember how it actually goes. That they end. Oh, well, of course.
The mother starts the.
Well, since already we've seen Mrs. Eaton be capturable or possessible. She is possessed by the ghost of Tanith, who actually, in turn, this is really cool.
I was surprised
Tanith,
by this.
who is dead, possesses Mrs. Eaton and gives her the incantation to say.
Just so we should preface, since we're already spoiling this, so it's not just suddenly she does this. Back in a few scenes earlier, the Duke decides to hypnotize.
To figure out where they
everyone.
Were.
Yeah, basically half the people in this movie have been hypnotized by the Duke. But
I completely forgot about that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they all stopped smoking, which is interesting.
Yeah. And lost 15 pounds. Actually, what do they say in Britain? They don't say pounds for.
Well, they say.
What do they call it?
Stone,
there's
which
like
is a measure of
stone. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, you're totally right. In the same way that Van Helsing used Mina in the book to locate Dracula, in this case, the Duke uses Mrs. Eaton who is under hypnosis to locate Charles Gray, but she is
through Mina, through what's her face, Nike over there, Nika.
Yeah.
Through Tannen's character, they're like, oh, we'll summon you back after the first time she gets it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
She gets killed like a couple times in this movie.
And it's so important. It's so important. I wish I'd remember that, because it's very important that because Tanith manages to possess Mrs. Eaton at that scene, that gives her sort of an entry to possess her again in the final scene when they're in the
right.
And yes, she possesses Mrs. Eaton once more. The little girl reads the incantation, because for whatever reason, it's more powerful coming from the little girl. And then the weirdest thing happens, which is that all the bad guys disappear.
They burst into flames by and large.
Yeah. And then they're gone. No dust, no nothing.
Well,
and we got a big, and over the altar is now a Christian symbol, which is cool.
And as I understand, somehow it doesn't become a church, but it becomes, everything is burned up, and the cross is in its place, which is, even Charles Gray sees it, and he sort of is surrounded by flames, and he falls down, and and again they had done this incantation before when the angel of death had shown up, so that now the little girl is doing it. Yeah. And again, terrible acolytes. No one's stopping any of this. They're all just no one's saying don't say it, blah blah blah. No one's trying to confuse the little girl. They just all stand there looking at her while she does it, and it has a similar kind of effect. I mean, everyone is destroyed, but then it has this other effect, which Christopher Lee plans to see when he does it the first time, but evidently it doesn't happen, and it happens this time, which is.
What are you thinking of?
After they're all gone, then they wake up and it's.
Oh, you're talking about the reversal of time. Yes.
Yeah. That really, I wish they didn't do that. Because
I'm actually not bothered by it. But go ahead, continue. Tell us why.
It feels a little too science fiction-y to me, I guess. Like it doesn't go like the rest of this movie is a cult.
Some people would just call it a cop out. In a sense, it's like saying it was just a dream, and that's what I thought happened at first.
Well,
I thought
the thing is that Tanis is still alive, and the Angel of Death has taken Makata
instead, right?
Instead, which in a way kind of robs us of the death of our villain.
Yeah,
and.
Yeah, I don't. That's the other problem, of course, is that if the Duke is the lead, we've broken a pretty common rule of writing, which is that now at the very end, the Duke doesn't even get to do the final business. It's instead, these other characters. But and they turn back time so that Tanith is alive. Well, they don't really turn back time. They just
it's a byproduct of the incantation. Look, it's a plot device that. You used it once, and now we're sort of using it again. I mean, you're not supposed to use it unless your immortal soul is in danger. Well, evidently, it's in danger in very short order here.
Yes.
And it's used. I could see using it when the Angel of Death shows up, sure. But then doing this one, I'm like, well, okay, if she does it, what does that mean? Does that mean that he said he couldn't do it again? He said, I can't, I dare not. So then then Tanith got the girl to do it. I could have done without that, but again, it's all right.
Interesting. See, for me, it was okay. Oh, go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No,
go
it's
ahead.
just it's like the end of Superman. Even though there's some time and space between these particular movies, it's like, oh, he can do this thing where he goes back in time. Yes. And I don't know. I have no idea if it happened in the book or anything else. It just struck me that somebody just said, "Oh no, we can't have an ending like this. Where whatever happens and she's dead, and we have to somehow, come with this device." And it just seemed like it wasn't well put together.
Yeah.
But we were already sort of nearing the end, so it was okay.
I guess that's true. I think that what they were trying to do was this notion that, yes, it's the same incantation, but it's different now because this angel, in this case Tanith in the afterlife, is going to guide us in it and give you one more chance to do this. I guess, but your point's well taken. I mean, it's a totally good point, is that this is a big trick, so it seems like you should only do it once, and we should instead haul out some other big trick for the end of it, for the end. Right. It feels like you're watching a Broadway show, and for some reason, instead of a finale song, they're instead going to use a song that they already used in the beginning of the show. So, yes. And that wraps it up, and we're left with the notion that we're going to see these characters again, because it certainly has the feel of, boy, what a fantastic adventure we've had, at the very end. And Christopher Lee was hoping that would happen. He had lobbied to get Dennis Wheatley's books, this Duke series, to happen, and it goes to the United States, and it didn't do well, and that's history. So there you go. Well, we should wrap up and get our final thoughts, and then go to endorsements. And I think we went. It was Drew, Jamie, Adam, and then I'll go. Drew, final thoughts. The Devil Rides Out.
Well, again, I don't think the ending works 100%, but overall there's enough in this movie that I just really enjoy this movie, and I was really glad that it was part of this retrospective. And in that sort of closing thought, Christopher Lee lived a very long life. He made a lot of movies. We could technically probably do an entire podcast just of Christopher Lee films. He made so many movies. I'm very glad with the 4 that we picked out. They were all very different from each other, yet somehow almost all of them involved cults, strangely enough.
That's true.
But this was a fun podcast to do, and a fun series of movies to do, and I'm glad we were able to sort of honor the passing of certainly one of the great icons of the horror genre, Sir Christopher Lee.
Very cool. Jamie, final thoughts. The Devil Rides Out, but also if you want to say anything about the end of the Christopher Lee retro, go for it.
Well, I hadn't seen most of these movies before, as I stated, except for the Horror Hotel, but I did enjoy most of them. Not all of them, but this one I would say is more on the positive, even though I thought it was ridiculous and bizarre. And there were lots of little, just kind of, I said, guffawing moments. Is that a correct term to describe it? But I don't know. But all in all, I would say I'd recommend it to somebody who's an avid Christopher Lee fan, and yeah, that's basically my say on that. Don't.
That's lovely, and I love the notion that you hadn't watched most of these before we did this. So that sort of makes the best retrospective when you're kind of exploring some new stuff. Adam, Devil Rides Out.
I'm sort of. I've watched a lot of movies, good movies, bad movies, a lot of genre pictures, and a lot of Christopher Lee movies. And he's up there for me, sort of with Karloff or any number of people who had a long career, Lon Chaney Jr., a reasonably long career. And, he's an old favorite. So to find something that I'd sort of overlooked, I don't know if I love all the Christopher Lee movies that I've seen. I like some certainly more than others, and he had a long and varied career for sure. But this is one that really surprised me. I said it earlier, I think that probably, the fact that it was so different from what I'd seen before probably colors a lot of my sort of impression of it and my willingness to go along with it. And the fact is, the movie did keep moving. And, it was just, I just found myself watching it and keeping, I was interested the entire time. And, I think when you talk about Hammer pictures and you talk about the genre at times, that's sometimes difficult. And you see a movie that you just go, oh, okay, what's happening now? It's a chore sometimes. Sometimes it's gleeful and awesome, but sometimes it's a chore. This was a great surprise. And, like I said, this has really, I think, become kind of a favorite now. So, Thanks for turning me on to something that I hadn't seen and sort of giving me a new favorite at the risk of being sort of a gushing Christopher Lee fan, which appears to be the accusation that I'm under right now. And I'll take that because this was good. I enjoyed it.
Very cool. What I really liked here is just this notion of an alternate universe that never came to fruition. That, if something else had happened to happen that weekend when this opened up in the United States, this might have been just over the line enough to justify another series. So we could have gone to the point where we're like, well, this Duke movie was better and this one was worse. I enjoy them all, but this one wasn't as strong or whatever. But it just didn't happen, which is kind of a shame. But you get a feel for it here, and I look, I'll watch almost any Hammer film. Like I love Dracula, Prince of Darkness, and other people don't like it. But this is Richard Matheson, and it's a pretty good thriller. So I kind of enjoyed it. Can't wait to see this one remade, and then hate the remake. I can looking forward to both of those steps in the process. So. All right, let's do endorsements. What have you been watching? What are you recommending to people that they go and get? I totally want to know. Mr. Drew, what you got for us?
Well, first off, I have to get my plug in. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I am going to be in San Antonio for Texas Comic-Con. You can easily Google that. That's TexasComicCon.com. Come by to my booth. Buy some Halloween Man, talk about the podcast, tell me how much you love the movies, tell me how much you hate my comics, or love my comics, hopefully love. But please come by and say hi. Secondly, my non-selfish plug this week, I have fallen in love with Danger 5, which is an Australian... And it's not easily describable, but I'll do my best. It's an Australian TV series set during a alternate World War II that is inspired by the 1960s television Japanese monster movies and God knows every other crazy pulp genre they could throw into it, where a team of international spies try to thwart dinosaurs, giant monsters, and for the love of God, kill Adolf Hitler. the closest equivalent, I would say, because it's got that sort of gleeful love of atomic age pulp that the Venture Brothers has, while still being tongue-in-cheek. So I could say it's almost like a live-action Venture Brothers, but there's also this weird level of surrealism to it that other parodies don't have. I mean, it's just so wonderfully funny, but also more than just funny, it's strange. And yet, visually, they capture the look of a 1960s genre show almost perfectly. So I would recommend it for anybody who's like a fan of vintage television, just for like the strange level of authenticity that's there. But that's it. Danger 5.
I'm really interested in that. That sounds fantastic.
You would get a kick out of it, actually. And I'd actually, for some reason, had remembered you saying that you had watched it, but I guess I was wrong.
I may have seen some other throwback kind of show, so who knows? Well,
both seasons are on Netflix. I haven't seen the second season, which takes place apparently in the 1980s. I've seen all of season 1, and it's amazing and ludicrous all at the same time. And I can't wait to see the rest of it.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jamie, what about endorsements? What do you got for us?
All right. Well, my selfish endorsement will be tune into Facebook on Thursday, because Danger Cake's, and I should say YouTube as well, but Danger Cake's new video, our music video, Quarterlife,
really?
for our album Quarterlife Crisis. It's our first song, Run Around Girl, and it's our first single off the album, and and we'll see that on Thursday. So, check out the Danger Cakes website, dangercakes.net, and Danger Cakes Facebook and YouTube, and see it. My non-selfish and humanitarian shout out and goes out to my Girls Rock crew. It's like our last session of camp, which is always hard, but it's it's sad to see it end. But you can help out and check out the camper bands at the North Door on Saturday, August 8th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're not in San Antonio or in a place where you could get to the Texas Comic-Con. But come check out these Little Girls Rock, and it's awesome and wonderful and inspiring. And every dollar we raise goes to send another girl to camp. So, So support Girls Rock Austin. You can check it out, girlsrockaustin.gov. I'm sorry, .org, not gov. My frivolous entertainment was endorsement was the Grand Budapest Hotel. I like most Wes Anderson movies, and Drew wasn't about watching it, but upon watching it, he couldn't quite take his eyes off, and I feel like it was a very whimsical movie, a lot more than. I don't know if I'd say a lot more. Well, yeah, I would say a lot more than Wes Anderson movies tend to be, which, they're usually kind of strange but interesting. But just if you're a fan of movies like Hugo, I'd say you'd probably definitely very much enjoy it. So
very cool. Adam, anything you'd like to endorse for us this week?
I am a latecomer to this. I actually just started watching Ray Donovan pretty recently with Leah Schreiber, and really liking it. The characters are really interesting. I like the setting. It's really interesting. Another season's
like
coming out.
That's like a series, right?
Yeah, and it's really good. I'm surprised how good it is. So.
All right, very cool. Okay, so. What I would mention is, first of all, Wet Hot American Summer, which Drew's endorsement is a parody of Atom Age spy thrillers and stuff. Wet Hot American Summer is a parody of Carter era summer camp movies, and I should say early Reagan era. The show is a television show that takes place on a single day. This is a Netflix series. It takes place on a single day, first day of camp in 1981, and it has a star-studded cast, and it's really crazy. It's a prequel to the movie, the independent film that didn't do very well but did really good on video, which was Wet Hot American Summer a number of years ago. And all of the cast members from Wet Hot American Summer, like Bradley Cooper and Janine Garofalo and Amy Poehler and Molly Shannon, everybody is back playing the same parts that they played before, only I think a couple years earlier, but all the actors are 10 years older, and all of the characters are supposed to be about 16. It's wonderful. It will blow your mind with how wonderful it is. I also have been reading. Well, I just finished reading Aziz Ansari's book, Modern Romance, and it's just about, because I've been married for over 20 years, so I get to just sort of laugh at all of this. But it's just about the problem of finding love and romance in today's era, and there's a lot of really great, funny bits on text messages that work versus text messages that don't work, and just fantastic stuff. So it's by Aziz Ansari, the comedian, but he actually put the book together with the help of a sociologist, and they went all around the world interviewing people everywhere, all around the United States and in other countries, in Japan, wherever, and finding out. So, do you text people, like, what kind of text would make you want to return something, and how hard is it for you to meet somebody? And it's very much a book of the moment, very funny, and so I loved it. So that's my book recommendation right now.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. That is the end of the Christopher Lee retrospective. We will be back very soon. I want to say, if you're joining us from Bleeding Cool, we're so happy you're here. Come to the Facebook page, leave comments. We totally want to engage with you. And leave reviews anywhere you see an opportunity to leave reviews. Drag your friends along and have them listen to the show. Thank you so, so much once again. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with an all-new retrospective, and we'll talk about that then. Actually, we might have a stop-off along the way for something else. But we'll be back in a couple of weeks regardless. Thank you, everybody. Cast members, thank you once again. And I'm so appreciative of everybody being on. And we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Talk to you soon. Have a good night.
All right. Good night.